profile of British cycling is at an all-time high, and where better to celebrate the sport's continued success story than at the Tour of Britain. This year's event has attracted some of the biggest names from the world of cycling. But isn't it time we had a homegrown winner? The 2011 Tour of Britain marks the 8th anniversary of the rebirth of the UK's largest cycle race. This event has firmly established itself as a centrepiece of the British sporting calendar. Attracting over 1 million spectators to the roadside, this year's event has all the makings of the best so far, with an all-star start list and a challenging and punishing course. In 2010, Tour hopefuls took on one of the toughest races in recent years, and the pack was duly blown apart. Stage wins came from Sky's Greg Henderson, back on Soleil's Wouter Powell's teammate Borit Bozic, Marco Frapporti of Colnago, and a trio of victories from the German powerhouse Andre Greipel.
Here comes Greipel, his voracious appetite spilling over, and that's his 22nd victory of the year.
But it was this man, HTC's Michael Albacini, who took the honours in Stage 3. And with an inspirational ride in Stage 7, the young Swiss rider pulled out an unassailable lead to take and keep hold of the yellow jersey. Well, this year's race has a lot to live up to, and with us for the duration, I'm delighted to say, is professional cyclist and a man who's ridden the Tour of Britain, Janto Barker. And Janto, you're going to be embedded with the teams, giving us the inside track. But huge anticipation here in Peebles as we're about to get this one underway.
Yep, Stage 1 today. I think it's going to be a really exciting race. I think it's fair to say probably the biggest Tour of Britain in terms of names who are going to be here this year. So I'm very excited to be part of this, and hopefully we can see some exciting racing unfold.
Why do you think this race has begun to attract the very big names?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously it has to fit in with preparation. There's the World Championships the week after this race finishes, and that's obviously an important one. And then riders looking for contracts for the next year. There aren't a lot of races left, so they have to make the most of every race that comes, and so those guys will be racing particularly hard at this race.
It's going to be a tough race to win, really high quality.
Yeah, it's very high quality, but also the roads are quite grippy, so you've got exposed roads, you've got hills, you've got everything, and it's going to be an exciting one to watch, and it could unfold in lots of different ways.
A lot of continental riders here. What will they find different to riding on the roads of Britain to compared with riding in Europe?
It sounds odd, but I think the actual lay of the tarmac on the road makes a difference. You can get a rolling resistance that is a lot quicker on the continent, and here it's a bit slower, a bit more bumpy, and that does take in, makes a difference on how the feel of the road goes and how fast the actual stages are.
Well, as Janto says, some of the biggest names in the sport are here. Let's take a look at some of the big names to watch. National champions, Grand Tour stage winners, world champions and Olympic gold medalists. It's a stellar cast of cycling overachievers who are taking to the UK's roads to see who'll perform best over the next week. A strong contingent of British riders, along with a host of big international names, pepper the 16-team lineup, with Tour de France green jersey winner Mark Cavendish competing in his first Tour of Britain since 2007, when he won 3 stages. Here by default, after dropping out of the Vuelta, Cav's sure to bring out the crowds, and he's surrounded by his loyal HTC henchmen, including lead-out man Mark Renshaw. No Dave Miller for Garmin Cervelo, understandably, after becoming a dad a couple of days ago, but his teammate and the reigning world champion for another couple of weeks, Thor Hushovd, is here, so the rainbow jersey will be on display for the next 8 days.
I mean, I think it's going to be a bit hard with the wind, and it looks like the weather condition is not 100%, but we'll see how the form is. Yeah, I'm motivated. Yeah.
Good.
The world's leading pro team Leopard Trek joined the fray, led by the hugely popular figure of Jens Voigt. And a strong lineup from Team Sky for their home tour, including Steve Cummings, whose second place in 2008 makes him the best British performer in the race so far. With Bradley Wiggins doing the business in the Vuelta, the team here is led by his able lieutenant Geraint Thomas. The Welshman is a former track world champion and Olympic gold medalist, and happy to be back on home turf.
I'm looking forward to it. It's we spend most of the year away racing and things, so it's always nice to come home and race on home roads in front of home fans and stuff, and as you know, it's always a bit tricky how to predict this race. A lot can happen, so we're just looking forward to it. We've got a strong team and just attack the race.
So they are some of the star names we can expect to see over the next 8 days around the highways and byways of Great Britain. Let's take a look at the whole route. The Tour of Britain will take place over 8 days and 9 stages, beginning in Peebles in the Scottish borders, before twisting and turning its way down the left-hand side of the country, including a short trip through the Welsh countryside. The tour then turns east up through the beautiful Devonshire and Somerset landscape for a visit to East Anglia and the run into London to witness a dual stage finale. Well, there's a little bit of everything in that route. Who do you think it's going to favour? There's something for the sprinters, there's something for the climbers, but from a general classification point of view, who do you think will enjoy this most?
I think actually it's going to be one of the time trial specialists, or at least someone who can hold their own, because the front group, I think, over the hardest climbs will probably be 10, maybe 8 or 10 riders, and so the selection really is going to be made in London on that last time trial stage, which you know, could make a few seconds here or there will make the difference. We've seen very, very small gaps make the difference between first and second.
Well, obviously don't have an Alps or a Pyrenees in Great Britain, but still some pretty tough climbs along the way.
Yeah, again, there's some very selective roads, and if the racing's hard from the beginning, it's going to be very, very difficult, and we will see some quite big selections and a lot of guys getting dropped.
And the weather will have a huge impact.
Yeah, very exposed, lots of wind. We've got quite severe weather reports for some of the first couple of days, and again, that could have a serious impact on the selection of the race, how it's taken, and how the riders ride it as well is another thing. Whether they ride steady for the first 20 Ks or whatever, or whether they're really going to start pressing on from the gun.
Well, in that case, I think we'll get the race underway. After the break, we'll have the start of this year's Tour of Britain. Peebles on the banks of the River Tweed is the picturesque starting point for the peloton as it heads along the valley towards Innerleithen and then up into the wild and beautiful Borders Hills, where the riders will pass the source of one of the most famous salmon fishing rivers in the world. This is border country with a rich and bloody history, and steady rolling climbs over Megget Hill, the wonderfully named Devil's Beef Tub, and Banks Hill along the way will certainly test the resolve of the riders before a mad, flattish dash to Dumfries. Stage 1 sees the peloton heading out of Peebles and along the Tweed Valley, with the first sprint coming up in quick time before heading over some twisty and narrow climbs on exposed roads through Megget Hill and over the Devil's Beef Tub. A fast descent then takes the race head on into Dumfries on a 68k loop and the final King of the Mountain climb before rumbling into the town's streets for one last time. IG Market's one of the many supporters of this year's Tour of Britain, and Chris Alfred from the company is here. Chris, why is it so important for you to be involved in the sport?
Well, it's nice to be involved in the biggest race in the UK, as we're already sponsored Team Sky, and this is a natural extension of that. Throughout the year we've been supporting local sportives to charity rides to everything, and it's great to be in the biggest UK race and have the new gold jersey for the race.
Looking forward to the race?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing the top riders in the top 20 of the Pro Cycling Index out there, Mark Cavendish and Thor Hushoff, so it should be good.
It should be a cracking race. The time for talking is over, unless of course you're part of our commentary team. Let's get the race underway now with Brian Smith and Hugh Porter.
Well, the field just preparing to roll away for the start of stage 1 of the Tour of Britain. 105 miles. It'll take the riders from Peebles down to Dumfries. There are 16 teams lining up. Vacances Soleil actually are taking the start with only 5 riders, so it means 95 are pedalling their way out on this first leg. There's Mark Cavendish. You can just see him smiling there behind the Sigma Sport rider. I wonder what he's going to do in this tour. And also we've got the world champion, Thor Hushoff. We'll be looking out for that rainbow jersey once the action does begin to unfold. Well, the pipe bands are here, the atmosphere's building, and I'm just wondering, will Great Britain record a victory for the first time since 2004 when the race was reintroduced to the calendar? Best position we've had so far, Steve Cummings, when he finished second at 5 seconds. Well, heading on then towards the first kilometre when the action will start. What kind of conditions can we expect today, Brian?
Well, there's severe weather conditions, a lot of rain and a lot of wind expected for later on in the stage, so we expect it to be a very tough, hard stage, but there are severe headwinds which might slow the field down.
And also we may get some echelon racing, and that is pretty tough as well. Well, it's all calm at the moment, but believe me, once that flag drops, they'll be going for it. HTC Columbia near the front, and there it is, we're away. Stage 1 has started. Now then, I wonder who's going to launch the first attack. Nobody seems too eager at the moment, but looking at the strength of the lineup, it is the strongest without a shadow of a doubt. The field, there's just about all the champions that want to sharpen themselves up ready for the World Championships.
No, it's a fantastic field here in Scotland, and for this stage from Peebles to Dumfries, the home of the bicycle. And you've got to remember there are 5 continental teams from Britain here, plus the Pro Tour team of Sky, as we see in our picture at the moment. So we're expecting the Brits to be on the attack today.
And Steve Cummings is the man that was just having a talk there, a tactical talk no doubt, to his manager. And you may have heard my comment earlier, Steve Cummings, the man that has come closest to winning for Great Britain when he finished second, 5 seconds behind the winner. Now then, this is Ann Post on the attack, the famous green colours. Ann Post then are the first team to start to try and distance themselves from the main field, and the main field doesn't look to be interested at all.
Yeah, I don't think they're really looking forward to the weather later on in the race, Hugh. But Gilbert is on the attack for Ann Post, followed by a rider from Sigma Sport.
Gilbert has been a professional for some 8 years, so this brace of riders look as though they're going to link up, and the peloton at the moment giving them the opportunity to get clear.
You've got to remember, Hugh, there are a lot of action here. You've got King of the Mountains, and you've got the Yodel sprints coming up as well. So the first one comes up in Innerleithen, which is just after the start.
So it's Russell Hampton confirmed now as the man from Sigma Sport. And he is a talented rider. He's done well on the track, actually, winning a round of the World Cup over in Los Angeles a few years ago. So there is an attack now beginning to develop off the front of the main field. That looks like one of the professionals from the Motorpoint squad.
Yeah, you can just see the orange in the shoulders of the Motorpoint team, and he's trying to come across to these 2 riders of Hampton at the front and Gilbert, the green jersey at the back. So these 2 riders pushing hard at the front. It's a strong wind blowing, and it's going to be a hard chase for the Motorpoint rider to come across to them.
St Andrew's Cross fluttering there as the children are waving it, and there's loads of kids have turned out to watch today's stage. Sunday, that's the way to enjoy it. Come out and watch a bike race. You saw the flick of the elbow there. That's the professional signal to tell the man to come through. Yeah,
they're just coming up to 1 kilometre to the Yodel sprint point. So Gilbert just coming through, looking back. 2 of them are looking back to see where this Motorpoint rider is, but they've not got a big time gap at the moment. This sprint coming up, and I would expect them to try and push on as hard as they can.
Well, on the line they will score points, 5, 3, 2 and 1, but probably more importantly is the fact that there are bonuses available. 3 seconds for first, 2 for second and 1 for third. So obviously if you stay clear, win the 3, you can amass quite a nice advantage.
Yeah, that's always a figuring factor when it comes to the overall at the end for the gold IG Markets jersey. But at this moment, these 2 riders in front of Hampton and Gilbert are just interested in getting more of a gap from them to the peloton.
So there they are, working now, and here is the attack now for the points on the line, and it's looking like Gilbert of Belgium in the green. Yeah, Gilbert of Belgium sweeps over the line first. He picks up the 5 points in the 3 seconds, and Russell Hampton quite content to follow his wheel over for second. And third, just for the record, it is to the rider from Motorpoint. We're still waiting to confirm the name of that rider, actually. We will shortly. But right at the back at the moment, Garmin Cervelo. Got a pretty strong squad out in this tour.
Yes, it's just unfortunate that our own David Miller from Scotland hasn't made it here. He had a baby just last week, so unfortunately he couldn't come to Scotland to ride in his homeland.
Well, it's easy at the front of the field at the moment. It's pedestrian pace. They're just tapping the rhythm out. They're not bothered about the 2 that have gone clear there. Just caught a glimpse of the world champion, and that's Tor Hushoff, as we can confirm the 3rd and 4th positions. Peter Williams then, the man from Motorpoint, and 4th Mark Cassidy, a teammate actually of Gilbert. Now then, we're on the foot slopes here of the first climb. It's Megget Hill. It's only 3rd cat, but it's a moorland descent, and the roads are looking pretty wet to me.
Yeah, they're wet, and you can just see the wind blustering on the growth at the side of the road, and there's no trees, no nothing, and it's very exposed at this moment in time. You can just see the reservoir on the right-hand side. These guys have got a tough day ahead of them.
But look at the lead already, 6 minutes and 5 seconds, and that flags up my original comment when I said that the bunch were quite happy to let these 2 go clear, and they are enjoying their escape.
Well, it's quite unfortunate that the Motorpoint rider of Peter Williams hasn't made it across to the front 2 of Hampton at the front and Gilbert at the back. So the 2 of them are forging away at the moment into these tough headwind conditions, which is going to slow everybody down today.
But just to take that point, strength in numbers, that is the vital requirement, isn't it? 2 more riders to give us a 4-strong break would be much better.
Well, you've got to remember, you've 6 riders in every team, so if you've got 2 riders in front, they can just put 2 riders at the front of the bunch, as we see the Irish champion Matt Bramier just heading for HTC.
Over the cattle grid, fallen off a few times on one or two of those when they're wet. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them on the stage today over these moorland roads, but you can just see the riders are struggling into this headwind. It's pretty much a headwind all the way to Dumfries, out the other side of Dumfries, and then they get a tailwind all the way back.
And just add another ingredient, that is the rain. It's starting to fall and fall quite heavily. So these are the worst conditions for the riders, and particularly on the opening leg. And you can see that the field is stretching out here, and racing caves now are becoming the order of the day, but it's the descent, isn't it? Technical and very, very tricky. And you can see, obviously, that Gilibert, the Belgium, is much more comfortable. He's gone clear of his breakaway companion, Hampton.
Yeah, it was a very steep, tricky descent with a couple of sharp corners on it, but you can just see the bunch at the moment, led by Sky and HTC High Road, and they're struggling on this climb as well, but everybody else leaving it up to these two teams to try and bring these two riders back.
Well, he's still there looking down the road, and you can see at the moment that Gilibert is going further away from him. So Hampton is clearly unhappy here, and we're just waiting for the arrival of the peloton at the summit of the climb. Here they are, they're just about ready to tackle the cattle grid, and Sky and HTC are very, very much in evidence on the sharp end of the bunch. There it is, the result confirmed for you. Well, it was Michael Rogers, the Australian, that got third, and Rasmussen coming over the line for fourth. Well, two riders clear, long way to go. We'll take a break. Welcome back, and a glorious panoramic view of the scenery here that the riders are battling their way through today. And I can tell you that it's still the two ahead, Russell Hampton and Pieter Gilibert of Belgium. And their lead, remember the last time we heard, was over 6 minutes. But there's been quite a bit of activity at the front of the main peloton, so that could be starting to decrease. And it looks like HTC Columbia and Sky are setting the pace here.
Well, we're on the second of the climbs today, the Devil's Beef Tub, so it's no surprise to me that HTC High Road are chasing these two riders down, because they have got one of the fastest guys in the world, Mark Cavendish.
5 minutes 15, so already they've carved nearly a minute off the advantage that these two had at one point. So as you say, they are getting a little bit concerned, and the workers for the big teams are now starting to ratchet the pace up at the front. And let me just tell you, there's one or two superstars in the field here. We've got Jens Voigt, a man that won stages in the Tour de France, Tour of Italy and Tour of Spain. And also, of course, we're going to be seeing at some time in the action Geraint Thomas, who is a rider that's actually gone down as saying he would dearly love to win this event.
I think any British rider would have loved to win this event, and you know, me and you included in the past. You can just see Mark Cavendish on the left hand side in his white helmet there and sunglasses on, although it's not particularly the best day for sunglasses today, Hugh.
I'm rather pleased, Brian, that you think I've still got the legs to win this event, but there we are. These two at the front are still trying to keep themselves clear of the bunch, but I'm sure they have on their mind the fact that that bunch is going to lift the pace significantly. They are enjoying their escape, but for how much longer? There is the face of Geraint Thomas. Well, I tell you what, this man is so talented, and he's had the best season of his life so far. And right alongside him, Mark Cavendish. Now, what are they talking about? I wonder if Mark Cavendish is saying, you're going to lead me out next year if I join Sky.
Well, I'll let you speculate on that, Hugh, but you know, it's great to see two young boys out enjoying racing. You know, that's the future of British cycling there, Geraint Thomas and Mark Cavendish.
So Cavendish, who of course comes from the Isle of Man, the Manx man, who's got 20 stage victories to his credit in the Tour de France, as we now are approaching the line here of the Devil's Beef Tub. And the first man across the top was Russell Hampton, so that's two firsts Russell Hampton has had. And I reckon what they're doing here, Hampton is getting the points on the mountains, and of course Gilibert is picking up the points in the sprints. Well, Alex Rasmussen is another man with an electric finish, part of the HTC Columbia squad. So they've got Renshaw, they've got Cavendish, and of course Rasmussen, who has been a world champion on the track.
You're just going up to the top of the Beef Tub, Skoda King of the Mountains points, and no reaction from the peloton at the moment, but I'm pretty sure these two boys in front have decided, as you said, Hugh, one's going for the Yoda sprints and one's going for the Skoda King of the Mountains, and they've decided early on because they want to push out as much an advantage as possible. And
if they can stay clear, it is feasible that they, of course, could be on the podium for a jersey at the presentations. Well, it was Cummings and Rasmussen that finished third and fourth over the climb. So that underlines our earlier comment that Sky and HTC Columbia are now doing the driving from the sharp end of the bunch.
Yeah, they're only thinking of the finish now. Bring these two riders back because you know, they've got a couple of fast men. Sky are thinking of the overall, HT are thinking of the stage one. But this gap coming down to 4 minutes and 10 seconds.
It's tumbling all the time, isn't it? Well, the summit of that climb is 37 miles, and let's not forget the length of the stage today is 105, so there's still a lot of racing to go. We're actually just 1 kilometre away from the second sprint in Moffat.
Yeah, I would expect that the green jersey of the Anpos rider Gilbert would take this. As we said, there's already an agreement, and this happens in professional cycling, that the riders agree and not waste any energy. So I would expect Gilbert to take maximum points here again, as he did do in the first sprint.
Big crowd has gathered here in Moffat, but those roads are beginning to look treacherous to me, and the rain is falling quite heavily. You can see evidence of that on the lens of our camera. And it was Gilbert that picked up the maximum points to add to the points he got in Alethan. Now these corners are becoming very dangerous.
Yeah, the weather has closed in. As we said at the top of the programme, it's going to get worse and worse as the day progresses, and these guys are treating these corners with a lot of respect. We're in a town, and sometimes you get a wee bit of a diesel dropped in the corners, so you could get, you know, a crash or two, so they're giving it 100%.
And really it's been a nightmare for the mechanics today, because the conditions, well, it's either going to be wet or it's going to be dry, and so they've had to select the right pressure for the tyres.
Oh, you're right, Hugh. It has been very difficult because you've got to remember they started in the dry earlier on today, and the weather has got wetter and wetter. So we're down to some really harsh conditions for these riders, and let's hope, fingers crossed, that nobody crashes today.
And the other thing, when you're on narrow roads like we saw the leaders there to avoid, are the leaves, because they are exceptionally dangerous, and the white lines. Now he's the sprint then for third in Moffat, and it looked like one of the Rabobank riders over the line there first, ahead of the man that led the sprint out from Sky. So it was Lars Boom just beating Matthew Heyman. Well, Boom's a former world cyclocross champion, so he's probably enjoying the conditions.
Yeah, and he's a big powerhouse as well, and very interesting that he took that 1 second bonus, because everything to play for when it comes to the finish. You got to remember 10, 6 and 4 at the finishing line, and 3, 2 and 1 in these sprints, so he's picked up 1 second, and he is a big danger.
Talented man, Lars Boom, also winner of the prologue in the Dauphiné this year, and he's also a stage winner in the Tour of Spain. Rabobank are here with a very, very strong squad, but still it's these two that continue to tap the rhythm out ahead. They will have learnt, of course, from the blackboard man that it is coming down slowly, but they've still got a comfortable window of advantage. HTC Columbia still right there, anxiously trying to turn the screw.
Well, a couple of other teams have come up towards the front. You've got the orange jerseys over at Rabobank having an interest in bringing this gap down as well. So all a wee bit easing at the front, HTC on the left-hand side, and having a wee word with each other. Lars back talking to Bernard Iso. What do? Do we push on, or we just take it a wee bit easier in these slippy corners?
So Rabobank in the orange. They've got another cracking sprinter in their team, in Theo Boss, who's a former world sprint champion on the track, so take him to the finish and he'll take some stopping. He's adapted very well to the road, and this kind of course will suit him. It's not too hilly.
Oh, for sure. You're only thinking about 2 or 3 weeks ago in the Dutch Food Valley Classic when he won it. So he is on form at the moment, and you would expect Rabobank are here with Lars Boom and Theo Boss to try and win.
Well, they're approaching another treacherous corner. They're just feathering the brakes. Oh, there's a crash there. One of the riders going down heavily and in the black strip. Now then, we'll have to speculate on who that was, but the black strip, that could well have been a Garmin Cervelo or one of the riders from Sky. Here's a chance to see it again. Let's have a look at this, Brian.
Yeah, well, it looks to me it's one of the riders from Sky. In fact, we're just hearing in our ears that it's actually Steve Cummings that's fallen, and you can see the camaraderie with the riders at the moment. That they decided, with a crash to some of their compatriots, they've decided to ease up and see what happens.
And we're hearing over race radio that other riders have fallen from HTC Columbia, Leopard, Trek and Sky.
This is going to disrupt the chase of the peloton at the moment. You still get 2 riders in front, Gilbert at front and Hampton at the back, just as we come into Dumfries.
Well, the fact that the peloton at the moment are sitting up waiting for the crash victims to rejoin, that's if they can, is playing into the hands of these two, who are now getting near to the third and final counter in the Yodel Sprints competition.
Well, it's a good effort here still by these two riders. They still have pushed out the advantage because of that crash, and they're sitting about 4 minutes at the moment. But just gingerly coming round this corner, Hampton in second place. But I'm pretty sure they'll roll across this line in the same order they have done in the previous two sprints.
Well, they'll go across the Buccleuch Bridge and into White Sands for the finish. Remember, on the line, it's 3-2-1 in time and 5-3-2-1 in points. And it looks as though they're going to cross the line in that order. It's Gilibert still at the front, so that means that he will have won all three. So he will be on the podium at the end to collect the jersey as the leader of that classification.
Yeah, so we're guaranteed that one rider from the breakaway of two is on the podium. We just have to hope that they try and stay away for this final climb, the third category climb, so that Hampton can try and take the points there. So we've got a long way to go, still a headwind as we do this loop back round into Dumfries.
And final climb coming at 87 miles, and it would be nice to see Hampton pick up more points. They've deserved it. They have both been the men of the match today, having established that yawning great lead of over 6 minutes at one point. But here come the bunch as we go back to the leader, and this is Hampton, just concentrating there, crouching down over the bars, just trying to keep the pace up.
Well, you can just see the bunch coming round the final corner, and this will be the final corner when they complete this lap towards the finish. And it's one of the Sky Riders deciding to take the final 1 second bonus as we cross the line of the Yodel sprint point.
Bit of a dummy run this for the finish, isn't it? And I bet Mark Cavendish is watching very closely so that he can get his run at the line.
Well, just look at the crowd, Hugh. This crowd is building for a fantastic finish here in Dumfries.
And they've stood there all day with the heavy rain falling, so they really are wrapped on the tour. Heyman it was then that finished in third spot, and boom, fourth. Still a long way to go. Welcome back, and the riders are now out on the finishing loop of 58 kilometres. Jens Voigt has abandoned then. He was one of the crash victims after the Moffat sprint, so the race has lost a big player there.
Oh, for sure, Hugh. He is one of the stalwarts in the Leopard Trek team, and a big disappointment for the Tour of Britain to lose a rider like that so early.
Look at this, it's down to 1 minute and 20 seconds now. They must surely be starting to think they're on borrowed time.
Well, we're at the final climb of the day, and that's at Banks Hill, and these two riders still pushing out. You've got to remember, Hugh, that the rider in the front, Russell Hampton, has taken maximum points so far today, and he wants to gain maximum points at the top of the climb here.
And Gilibert, the Belgian, of course, his breakaway companion, he's happy. He's had a full house in the Yodel sprint competition, so he's already got a jersey to collect in Dumfries when we get to the protocol ceremony.
Well, as we go over the top of the climb here, there's still 18 miles to go to the finish, and they're not so easy. But the good thing about it is we start to swing round, heading back towards Dumfries, and the wind will be behind them.
That was the Australian Matthew Heyman on the front of the main field. Heyman, of course, one of the strong men in the Sky team. Now then, we're getting towards the summit of the final climb of the day, Banks Hill. And it's here, of course, that Russell Hampton will be looking to add. He does, in fact, he picks up the maximum points. So he's won all three climbs today. So he is the leader of the King of the Mountains.
No, this is great to see. Two riders been in front all day, sharing the jerseys. Hampton at the front for Sigma Sport, taking the Skoda King of the Mountains jersey, and Gilibert coming through in the green jersey will be on the podium for the Sprints jersey, and that's the Yodel Sprints jersey.
The conditions are still very, very brutal indeed. It's pelting down with rain, as you can see, as HTC Columbia now come right to the front, and the bunch are filling all the road here. So the pressure isn't fully on, but it's beginning to thin out, which means the big teams are starting to turn the screw.
Well, they're all interested in keeping the riders near the front, the sprinters on their team as close to the front as possible, because you've got to remember we're getting closer and closer to go to the finish.
So the lead is falling all the time, and those two now know that they're beginning to be put under the cosh.
Well, you can just see the commissaire cars behind them, the neutral service, the two service cars, so the gap is still a minute at the moment, but coming down very, very quickly.
Rabobank also are in the mix here at the front, and we did speculate early on in our commentary about the chances for Theo Boss, so they'll be looking for the interests of Boss, but you can see now it's Team Sky that are coming through, and that looks like Dowsett.
Yeah, Alex Dowsett at the front, actually a training partner of Russell Hampton, but it's the same three teams dominating the front of the bunch at the moment: Sky, HTC and Rabobank.
And there it is for you. Dowsett did get third over the climb and Heyman 4. So Sky beginning to gather here and start to ratchet the pace up.
Well, this is what it's all about, Hugh. We get into the final 20-odd kilometres. These two riders hanging on for dear life. And can they make it to the finish? We'll have to go wait and see, but I don't think so, with Sky, HTC and Rabobank prepared to ride hard on the front.
It's a big ask, isn't it, when you've got these three teams now taking interest in the possibility of the stage victory. How much longer are they going to enjoy the freedom? But the rain is peppering down.
Yeah, you've got to remember as well that there's three strong teams here pushing hard at the front. There's another 13 teams in this race. I'm pretty sure you might see a counter-attack if these two riders are brought back soon.
Well, we shall wait to see whether that does occur, but at the moment Rabobank now have come into the mix as well. So the strength of Rabobank, HTC and of course Sky all knitting well together, and the odds really are stacked against them.
Well, you can just see the grit and determination on the face of the two riders in front. But these roads, there's a main road all the way into the finish, so they'll be seen in these big long straights.
But of course there are sections that are narrow when they go under the tree, so that could play into the hands of the leaders.
Yeah, of course they don't want to bring them back too early, but we're getting closer and closer all the way to the finish. You can just see the effort in the riders' faces as they start looking behind and see the bunch.
There they are, the cars have been pulled out, which means the gap is not 30 seconds, and that means now that the peloton have got the two escapees firmly in their sights.
Well, we're starting to see some new teams near at the front. You can just see the light blue and white of NetApp. You can see Endura Racing in the black and the lime green. So all these riders are prepared to get involved with this race today to try and get up there on the stage.
Well, once the junction has been made, that would be the opportunity for one of the lesser known riders to try and jump clear for a surprise win.
Yeah, of course they can, and these two riders still pushing hard at the front. NetApp were riding at the front, the German sponsored squad, and so many other teams are thinking of this finish today because they know that if they come to this finish, the favourite would be Mark Cavendish, so they want to try and maybe gain a march on him.
They're just dangling off the front, aren't they? Tenaciously clinging to a lead, but for how much longer? Well, it looks as though they've surrendered to me. There we are, 10 kilometres to go, and Gilbert pats his breakaway companion on the back, Russell Hampton, and said, well, we've had a good day. We've figured strongly in the two competitions, but I think the day is over for us now.
Yeah, it's been a great stage for these two riders. They're going to end up in the podium today, but they're not going to end up as the stage winner. You can just see the bunch fanning across the road, nobody wanting to take it up. Still 10 kilometres to go, although the wind is behind them. A lot of teams are now thinking of the win today.
That's the beauty of stage races. Everybody can't be the winner, and that's why they have all these alternative classifications, which gives all the other teams an opportunity to figure.
And here we go, Hugh, on the left-hand side, top spot. Vlaanderen decided to go on the tip. As expected, when the two riders are brought back, we see a counter-attack going.
Well, top spot Vlaanderen, another Belgian squad having a crack here. Just what we were saying, a surprise move. Now then, can he get clear? Will they give him his head? There it is confirmed. Preben van Hek is the man going.
Well, this is a team we've seen often in the Tour of Britain, very prepared to go on the attack, but they're not giving them much at the moment. Still NetApp for the German team riding in the front. On the right-hand side, you've got the HTC train of Mark Cavendish.
So Preben van Hek is dangling there just off the front of the field, but for how much longer? You get the feeling here that the HTC Columbia Express is going to start to line up to give the lead out for Cavendish.
Well, it's still early at the moment. They're riding on the right hand side with the Irish champion Mark Bramier. In the middle, in the light blue and white, you've got the NetApp team, so everybody just sitting back at the moment. But Preben van Hek still pushing hard at the moment, and getting that hot, he has to take his gilet off.
That's right. Well, they've been wearing those most of the day, haven't they, with the rain that's been falling? But who's going to be the first to jump off the front of the main field, or will it be just a general build-up of the rhythm? Bramier, as you pointed out, a very good time trialer, and the Irish champion, he's looking after the interests of his teammates from the An Post squad.
Well, Preben van Hek is still determined to ride off the front of this bunch, but he's not going to get too far. He's only got about 50 metres at the moment, so starting to feel the pain.
Well, this stage through the borders despite the weather, and reminiscent of course of a stage race, with the riders breaking away, building up the advantage, and then the onus being left to the strong squads to try and wind them back in. So the return to Scotland for the Tour of Britain has proved to be very fruitful for two riders. That's Gilbert and Hampton, but who's he going to prove to be fruitful hopeful for with the stage victory.
Oh, that's yet to be seen at the moment. You would expect Mark Cavendish would be up there, Theo Boss could be up there as well. So it's very open at the moment, and still a few teams sitting back, and we're going to see more and more attacking as soon as we get towards the finish.
Well, the race will come down a pretty straight road actually before it swings right over the Buccleuch Bridge into the White Sands Promenade. But they've had a chance to look at it already, remember, when they crossed the line for the final sprint in the Yodel Sprints competition. Well, he's still just dangling off the front, but it's not going to be for much longer, is it?
No, I wouldn't think so, with the might of HDC High Road at the front. Matt Bramier, the time trial champion of Ireland, sitting propped in the front trying to bring him back. This is going to be a bunch finish in the first stage of the Tour of Britain here in Dumfries.
It's pegged, isn't it, at about 200 metres, so he's not going away. The field are just letting him dangle out there.
Yeah, they're prepared to go down to the sprint, and you know, if I was in there, I wouldn't really be confident with the likes of Mark Cavendish and Theo Boss. They are trying to do something about it. You can see some of the black jerseys of Garmin, also the black jerseys of Rafa Condor Sharp. This is going to be a very difficult sprint. It's slightly downhill over the bridge in a sharp right-hand corner, and it's very, very tricky.
That advantage is coming down now. I said it was about 250 metres before, but it now looks to be only about 100.
Yeah, it's definitely coming down. They're just letting them dangle as there, as you say. Riders at the back of the race, you can just see Russell Hampton on the left-hand side. He will be on the podium. Great pat in the back from him for the domestic pro to come up out here with the first stage with a jersey in his back.
Well, they obviously started with a game plan in mind, because Matt Stevens is their manager, a former British champion and one of the most respected pros on the domestic scene. But he still stubbornly stays out in front here, Preben van Heck. But what will be on the minds of the big teams now, Brian, as they are looking for their sprinters?
Well, you've got to remember, Hugh, there's only 6 riders in each team here, so they can't afford to hit the front too early. We've seen the Tour de France where they've got 9 riders and they hit the front about 5 kilometres to go, so they want to try and sit back and leave it to maybe some of the other squads before coming up later on.
You mentioned Rafa Condor Sharp. Well, there is a rider coming to the front there from Rafa Condor Sharp.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of movement at the front of the bunch. We see Vakon Soleil on the left-hand side having a go, still the German team of Netap on the right-hand side. All over the road at the moment as people grapple for wheels.
Well, Vakon Soleil had a superb Tour of Britain last year, and they started today with only 5, but the skipper of their squad is the great Thomas de Gent, who won the King of the Mountains and the points in this event a couple of years ago.
Tour of Britain, a great race for him, but Vakon Soleil pushing hard at the front. Netap still in it. Rafa Condor Sharp in 3rd place at the moment. Endura racing over there as we hit the 5 kilometre to go board.
5 kilometres of racing remaining. That's just a little over 6 minutes left then before we are going to know who will be the winner of the first stage here in Dumfries. And the pace is beginning to increase. You can see now that the riders are starting to have to work hard to stay in the wheel of the others. And look at this HTC Columbia lining out on the front, and it's last back. He looks across to see who's next, and that's Matt Bramier.
Well, Lars Bak has done his turn at the front, leaves the Irish champion Matt Bramier to ride the next kilometre in the front. But just watch out for the orange jerseys on the left-hand side as they're looking after Lars Boom and Theo Boss.
At the moment, Sky are not near the front. They've got a bit of work to do if they want to set it up for Ben Swift.
Well, they have to move, but there's still about 3 kilometres to go at the moment. A very fast finish, but I'm pretty sure these guys will be coming up very, very soon.
Well, that's Alex Rasmussen, who can sprint with the best as well. He is a superb rider on the track and very powerful.
Well, you've got to remember, Mark Cavendish is here. He's right at the back of the train at the moment, just in behind Mark Renshaw at the moment. Bernard Iso in front of him. They have come with a very powerful squad. If you were to put your money on Cavendish to win this stage, you would do it, but he's going to be up against some tough competition here by the Rabobank riders in the orange.
He always looks calm though, doesn't he? Even though there's a lot of pushing and shoving in the closing stages of these sprints, he always depends entirely on, of course, Mark Renshaw. Now then, Rabobank again coming through here. I'm just trying to see whether I can see Theo Boss, actually, the former world sprint champion. Yes, there he is. He's tall, Theo Boss. He's about 6 back.
Well, you can just look at HDC High Road. Don't have it all their own way at the moment. Rabobank getting in the mix. You've got Netap also in the mix as well. Some riders on the left-hand side in the black and the lime green. Moving up there, you see Ian Wilkinson, the domestic pro from Endura Racing. So everybody prepared to put something on the line today to try and get a result in Dumfries.
So that would be a story, wouldn't it, if Endura Racing could land a stage victory here. Wilkinson can mix it with the best when they charge for the line. So he's getting involved as well. They're taking both sides of the the island here, and it looks very much to me as though the right side is the shorter route. Yes, it is. The other riders have lost about 50 metres.
Well, that's what happens. You have to read your manual, and the manual says, you know, the quickest way round the final roundabout was on the right hand side, and one of the Endura riders is at the front now, followed by one of the Rabobank riders, so all to play for, but there's a lot of riders went round the wrong way and have lost their place at the front of this race.
Endura Man has definitely profited from that as we now get ever nearer to that run for the line. But HTC Columbia, they're always near. They never panic. They read these finishes absolutely superbly.
Well, you can just see the speed that they're coming into Dumfries at the moment, slightly downhill. As I said, a fast finish. We're starting to see gaps in the peloton at the moment. 2 kilometres to go. Rabobank are up there. United Healthcare are leading it out. But just look at the boys in black coming up on the outsides, and that's Team Sky.
The field is actually fractured there, and that was, of course, by the 2 routes taken around the island. And now that group at the front, it's not very big, and the others are trying to play catch-up.
But you can see at the moment still United Healthcare at the front, 2 riders from Rabobank. Pretty sure the 2 riders in HTC are Mark Renshaw and Mark Cavendish. Also in the mix is Roger Hammond, so it's going to be an interesting sprint as we get down into the sands.
Look, there is Theo Boss. He's sitting second wheel, and that looks very much to me like Lars Boom. He's playing lead-out man for Boss. So it's Rabobank at the moment at the front. HTC Columbia just sitting at the side of them.
Yeah, you're looking at the front at the moment. You've got Tanking at the front, Boom in second place. Theo Boss in third place at the moment, and they are the riders to beat at the moment. 3 riders from Rabobank pushing hard as we head down towards the bridge.
It's not too far to go now, and the pace is really being applied here. Look at Cavendish, he's just sitting about 5 back, just taking a peep past his teammate to see who's actually gone ahead.
Well, this bunch is swelled at the moment, and we're coming close to the 1 kilometre to go, Hugh, and it's still Rabobank pushing hard at the front.
They are determined, the Dutch team here, to try and spoil the party for HTC Columbia. It's going to be a fantastic grand finale here at the end of this 105-mile stage that have seen the riders pedal through some pretty harsh conditions from Peebles down to this finish in Dumfries. Getting closer now to the right. That's the Buccleuch Bridge. This is where they turn now into the finishing straight. It drops downhill. They are cautiously round the corner, and it's still Rabobank at the front. Rabobank setting this up, and they're trying to set it up for Theo Boss. There's a little gap. They've gone clear. HTC Columbia are in the mix as well. Mark Renshaw is there, and now Cavendish has launched the winning move. Cavendish takes it on the line. His voracious appetite for victory spills over here in Dumfries, and he wins stage 1 after a thrilling race that's taken him through the rain.
No one has a better nose for the finish line than Mark Cavendish, a hugely popular winner in Dumfries and a beautifully timed sprint with his HTC teammate Mark Renshaw. And confirmation of the result, HTC taking the top 2 spots, Rabobank's Theo Boss in third, and Vacances Soleil's Barry Marcus finishing 4th, the best placed young rider. Geraint Thomas with the same time as the leaders, coming in 5th place. So today's stage winner Mark Cavendish acknowledging the crowds who braved the grim weather to see him win here in Dumfries, the biggest name in the race, turning it on when it mattered most.
That was horrible. Like, everyone had like 3 jackets on, some guys had long finger gloves, and considering I've just pulled out of a race because it was too hot, it's going on the same time as this, you know, it just shows the diversities we have in cycling really.
And how does it feel to be back here in the Tour of Britain? Wonderful support for you out there on the road.
That's incredible, super happy to be here. You know, the crowds at the beginning of Peebles was incredible, the crowds here was spectacular, standing on the podium. Super nice, you know.
The first recipient of the Yodel Sprints jersey was Belgian Peter Gilibert of the An Post Sean Kelly team. The Skoda King of the Mountains jersey going to Sigma Sports Specialised rider Russell Hampton. And the man of the moment, Mark Cavendish, picking up 2 more jerseys for his growing collection. First, the Prostate Cancer Charity Points jersey. And as winner of the opening stage, obviously Cavendish is now in the IG Markets Gold jersey and leads the general classification. Mark Cavendish following the script. Everybody anticipated it would be a Cavendish sprint finish here in Dumfries, and he didn't let us down. Jantu, how impressed were you by that ride?
I was. A very impressive ride by the whole team, very controlled. They kept it all together and obviously brought it back just in time for Mark to take the stage win.
Big smile on his face when he came in, but goodness me, it's been a hard day in the saddle for these guys.
Yeah, it's been windy, rainy, headwind, very slow, and very difficult for the riders, but they've managed to navigate it safely, and they're here, so very good.
and more of the same forecast as the week goes on.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So best of luck to them. I'm sure they'll get through it, but yeah, hopefully it'll get a bit sunnier soon.
So it blows by. We're a wee bit bedraggled here in Dumfries. But Mark Cavendish is in possession of the IG Markets gold jersey. How long can he hold on to it? Well, it could be another sprint finish tomorrow as they ride from Kendal down to Blackpool. Yanto will be there, and Ned Bolting's back in the saddle. Enjoy the rest of the race. Bye from now.